let's talk about how it might actually, that's great for human flourishment. What about the environment? Because supposedly it's so bad for the environment because apparently it uses so much electricity, it's bad for the environment. I already broke down how it's only using electricity that's already been made and not being used. So it's not doing anything that wasn't already made, first of all. But what it's actually doing is kind of going back to what I was saying before the break. What capitalism does is capitalism takes private property and tries to use those scarce resources more efficiently. So it turns trash into treasure, right? Keynesian economics, when you print money, it creates waste. Capitalism preserves it. Your company's profitability is the scorecard for how efficient you are with your resources. So, for example, in the United States, thankful to new technology that was called fracking back in 2008, we discovered that we can get more natural gas out of the ground than we ever had imagined. And we have so much, the United States has so much natural gas, it's so abundant and so cheap that we don't even bother to capture it. As a matter of fact, all throughout the oil fields of the Midwest and the rest of the U.S. and into Canada, the natural gas comes out of an oil well. So they drill for oil, natural gas comes out of it. They don't even capture it. It's worth so little, it's so abundant that it's not even captured. It's totally wasted. It's literally just what they call vented. They just allow it to just seep. It's just gas, right? So they allow it to vent into the ecosystem, or they'll flare it, or they'll actually turn it on fire. And you might have seen pictures like on an oil field with like fire sticking them out of these tubes. So they're either venting it or flaring it. That's waste. They're getting natural gas energy out of the ground and literally lighting it on fire. That's wasting it, right? Would you agree? They've already done the work. It's already coming out of the ground. And here they are either letting it seep into the ecosystem or lighting it on fire. Well, what if we didn't waste it? What if we actually captured it? Well, we don't capture it because, like I said, the cost is too cheap at this point. But what we can do, and what is being done, has been being done for a number of years now, is you can go to these wellheads where the natural gas is coming off, and you can get a container full of Bitcoin mining computers and stick it at the wellhead and run Bitcoin mining. So a couple things happen. Now, you might say, well, why don't they just, if they're going to capture it there, why don't they send it to the pipeline? Because it's what we call stranded. It's so far away from any infrastructure that it's not profitable to capture it and bring it to the market to run pipelines or whatever it is. And so there, in this instance, the natural gas has been created. The energy has been created. It's literally seeping into the ecosystem or burning off. It's being wasted, and here they are capturing it at the wellhead and turning it into economic power. It's creating jobs. It's creating technology. It's creating economic activity off of wasted energy. And it's not just that it's using wasted energy. It's actually good for the environment, because if you're an environmentalist, then you probably believe that all that gas seeping into the ecosystem isn't good. Methane gas and whatever gas it has. So if they can capture that and use it, it doesn't go into the environment. So not only are they taking something that's already been created and being wasted and utilizing it, using the resources more efficiently, they're actually saving it from going into the ecosystem, which is good for the environment. Now, that's one example. We talked about, starting entire new communities in the poor, impoverished nations that live in an apocalyptic world. But what about even in California, where I mentioned how the power grid goes down all the time, or in Texas, where the power grid is going out all the time? What about places like that? Well, in California or Texas, or places where the power grid is weak, we obviously don't have enough electricity. That's a problem. Which is why in California, which is leading the charge on moving everybody to EV vehicles, in the summer when the power starts going blackouts, they tell people not to charge their EV vehicles, which is insane. So what happens is obviously during the peak times in California, they need more electricity, obviously, right? So they could build an additional power plant, but they may not need that power plant to run all the time. So in places, not California, they're not very smart, but in other places like Texas, they run what's called a peaker plant. So a peaker plant means when you hit peak energy use, when you have a massive demand on energy use, you have this backup plant that can produce even more electricity. The problem is that, as you might imagine, it's very expensive to build an entire new power plant that never gets used. Talk about waste. Talk about waste. Think about that. They have to, clear all the tractors that have to, grade the land, bulldoze the land, all the equipment, all the materials that go into building out these power plants, all the oil, all the energy, all the cement, metal, all that. Build that entire power plant, all the cost, effort, time, labor, energy, and then it just sits there dormant most of the year. Only comes on at the point where that peak overload is needed. That's a waste. Well, what could they do with that? Well, they can't just turn it on because they don't have a buyer for the electricity. They could run the peaker plant all the time, but who's going to buy the energy? There's nobody there to buy it. So it's a big problem. But what they can do is so then you might imagine it's a big problem. So guess what? They don't build peaker plants. So in places like California, we just go without power when we need it the most. When it's the hottest, and you need your AC to come on, or it's nighttime and you need your lights to come on so your kids can do their homework, we'll just shut it off because we can't afford to build the peaker plants. But what if you could build a peaker plant and use all that energy while it's being idle to mine Bitcoin? So now, as an investor, we can put up money. We could spend the money for the peaker plant. We can now make money back by mining Bitcoin. And when the that peaker plant energy is needed on the grid, we just turn off the Bitcoin mining and just let them use the extra power. Think about that. So now we've solved a big problem. There's a big problem all throughout the United States where there's problems with having enough electricity. The answer would be build peaker plants. The problem is it's not economical to do so, and now it's fixed that problem. You're starting to get the idea. The one thing I'm just going to continue to pound into your head is that it is not wasting energy. Bitcoin only uses energy that's already being wasted. And the reason why is because all economics is actually super simple. It's all boiled down to supply and demand. In California, the reason why there's no Bitcoin mining is because the power is too expensive. Why is it too expensive? There's more people that want to buy electricity than there is electricity available. So in the summer months in California, at the top end of our tiered system, you might pay 45 cents per kilowatt hour, 45 cents. Bitcoin mining can only survive. To be competitive, you need to be like below 5 cents. And really, most of the big Bitcoin mining facilities are under 3 cents. Well, how the heck can they find 3-cent power when California is 45? That's easy. Because they're only buying electricity that is already being created and not being purchased. There's back to supply and demand. There's more supply than there is demand for it. So Bitcoin cannot waste energy. Bitcoin can only use energy that's already going to be wasted. Now, plugging in the computers themselves, that doesn't release any emission. The whole argument is about the energy overall. Not about creating the energy. It's not about the actual computers running. Now, in a lot of cases, what we're seeing now, this is ingenious. I met with a company who is in France, and what they're doing is they're taking household appliances that already use electricity, like, for example, space heaters. These use massive amounts of electricity, and they're putting Bitcoin mining into the space heaters. So now I go to the store, I can buy heater number 1 for $100. I can buy heater number 2 for $100. But heater number 2 gives me back 20% of my electricity bill every single month. That's pretty good. It's offsetting my electricity bill. I'm already going to buy the electricity. I'm already going to buy the heater. I'm already going to heat my home. Why not mine some Bitcoin and get some money back? You're starting to see how this works. And so they are trying to spread this information for some other reason other than energy. It's clearly not that. It's clearly not for human flourishment. It's clearly not that. So what is it then? Well, then you have to go, well, shoot, they must not want us to have our own money. Well, then why don't they want us to have our own money? Now you're on the right path. You're asking the right questions. I'll have to answer those on another time. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Mark Moss Show. We've been talking about the latest breaking news in this decentralized revolution. That's what we got today. Thanks so much for listening.